I knew the second Jordan Hayes leaned back in that overpriced ergonomic chair, lips curling like he'd just won the corporate lottery, that this was going to be one of those days people talk about for years. His voice carried that smug confidence of a 37-year-old MBA consultant who thought business school taught him everything about running a manufacturing operation. Badge, laptop, and access cards on my desk. Now, no preamble, no explanation, just a public execution in front of the entire quarterly review meeting. 18 employees watching from their conference room seats and video calls, including Ashley Williams, the 27-year-old systems developer I'd been mentoring for the past 3 years. She looked like she'd been slapped. Hell, we all did. My name's Aaron Westfield, and I'm 53 years old. Been with Hancock Industrial Systems for 26 years. Built half their automation infrastructure with my own hands. Started here when I got out of the Navy, where I'd spent 8 years keeping electronics running on destroyers that would make a grown man seasick. Norfolk, mostly, but a few deployments that taught me patience, planning, and the value of preparation. When I walked into this place in 1998, it had maybe 45 employees and production systems held together with duct tape and prayers. I was 27, fresh out of the service and hungry to build something that would last. Met my ex-wife Michelle at the company Christmas party that same year. She was in accounting back then, sweet smile, and actually listened when I talked about work. We had some good years before things fell apart. The divorce was finalized 4 years ago, but we still coordinate when it comes to Justin, our 20-year-old son who's a junior at State studying mechanical engineering. The kid's got my brain for systems and his mother's people skills, which makes him smarter than both of us combined. The tuition payments hit my checking account like a sledgehammer every semester. $9,200 rice for in-state plus room and board brings it to about $15,000 total. Between that and supporting my elderly parents in their assisted living facility at $30,200 a month, I wasn't exactly living large, but I was making it work. Had been for 26 years through 4 CEOs, 3 major acquisitions, and more reorganizations than I could count. Jordan even paused after access cards like he was expecting applause from his audience. This was the efficiency consultant they'd brought in 8 months ago to optimize operations and streamline costs. Translation: fire expensive old-timers and replace them with cheaper alternatives. I was apparently expensive at $92,000 a year for keeping their entire digital and production infrastructure from collapsing. The thing is, 8 months ago, I'd had what the doctors politely called a cardiac episode. Nothing major, they assured me, but enough to remind me I wasn't 30 anymore and needed to keep my health insurance. My cardiologist, Dr. Peters, wanted me to reduce stress. Apparently the universe had other plans. You seem surprised, Aaron. Jordan continued, clearly enjoying himself. Surely a man with your experience understands the need for operational efficiency in today's competitive market. I didn't give him the satisfaction of begging. 8 years in the Navy teaches you that some battles aren't worth fighting in public. I took my badge off with one smooth motion, the same way I'd removed my military ID for the last time all those years ago. Set it next to the laptop I'd already powered down during his little speech, and placed my access cards beside them like I was arranging items for inspection. You'll be receiving information about Cora and your final paycheck from HR. Jordan added, his voice carrying across the silent conference room. Security will escort you to collect any personal items. That's when I almost smiled. Because Jordan Hayes, with his freshly minted MBA from some prestigious program, had no idea what he'd just done. He thought he was firing a middle-aged IT guy who'd gotten too comfortable and too expensive. What he'd actually done was fire the architect of their entire digital ecosystem. See, about 14 years ago, when the company was expanding fast and needed better integration between their production systems and IT infrastructure, I'd proposed building a unified control platform. Management loved the idea but balked at the vendor quotes: $280,000 for implementation plus $65,000 annually for licensing. That was serious money for a mid-sized manufacturer. So I made them an offer they couldn't refuse. Let me build it myself through my consulting company, Ironclad Solutions, for half the price. I'd founded Ironclad as a side business years earlier, mostly doing small automation contracts for local manufacturers. Nothing fancy, just solid work that paid the bills. But this project was different. This was going to be my masterpiece. Over the next 4 years, working nights and weekends while still handling my regular duties, I built them a system that didn't just handle network access. It managed everything. production line controls, safety monitoring systems, inventory tracking, environmental controls, even the smart locks on the chemical storage areas. Every electronic function in that 200,000 square foot facility ran through Ironclad's authentication layer. And because I wasn't stupid, I wrote the licensing agreement myself. Legal approved it without really reading it, focused as they were on the cost savings and impressed by my technical documentation. Buried in Section 8, subsection D, was language so clear a first-year law student couldn't miss it. This license shall remain valid only while the named founder remains actively employed by the licensee. Termination of employment, voluntary or otherwise, will result in immediate termination of the master license. I walked out of that conference room with my head high, security trailing behind me like I was some kind of flight risk. Michael Torres, the security guard, was a good guy I'd known for 12 years. He looked embarrassed as hell. "Sorry about this, Aaron," he muttered as we walked toward my desk. "This is complete garbage." "Just business, Michael," I told him. But inside, I was thinking about that license agreement and wondering how long it would take them to realize what they'd lost. My desk was exactly as I'd left it that morning. Coffee mug still half full, a picture of Justin at his high school graduation, wearing that proud smile, and a small flag I'd kept since my discharge ceremony. 26 years of my life packed into 2 cardboard boxes. As we walked toward the exit, I could feel eyes on me from every cubicle and office. Some sympathetic, some curious, some probably relieved it wasn't them. Brandon Stone, my closest ally in the engineering department, gave me a subtle nod. Ashley Williams looked like she was about to cry. Out in the parking lot, I didn't get angry. Anger clouds judgment, and the Navy had beaten that lesson into me during some very long nights in rough seas. I sat in my truck, hands on the wheel, feeling oddly clear-headed for the first time in months. 26 years of loyalty, and this was how it ended. But as I drove home through the afternoon traffic, something else was settling in my mind. Jordan Hayes had just made the biggest mistake of his career. He just didn't know it yet. The thing about military training is it teaches you to think in terms of mission parameters and contingency planning. Driving home that afternoon, I wasn't sulking about getting fired. I was calculating variables. HR would process my termination paperwork by end of business. The system would update overnight. By tomorrow morning, every production line, every safety monitor, every access point in that facility would be asking for authentication from a license that no longer existed. I live in a modest 2-bedroom apartment about 25 minutes from the plant. Nothing fancy, but it's clean and quiet, which is all I need these days. After Michelle and I split up, I sold the house we'd bought when Justin was little. The extra money went into his college fund and my parents' care fund, which was looking pretty important right about now given my sudden unemployment status. The apartment complex is mostly working folks, nurses, teachers, a few other factory workers. Mrs. Patterson next door is a retired librarian who always asks about Justin when she sees me. Good people, the kind who understand that life sometimes throws you curveballs and you just have to adjust your swing. I poured myself 2 fingers of bourbon, Maker's Mark, nothing too fancy but better than what we used to drink in the ship's mess, and sat down at my kitchen table with my personal laptop. The Ironclad Solutions admin panel loaded up like it had thousands of times before, showing me a real-time view of their entire infrastructure. 1,247 active connections, production lines humming along, safety systems green across the board, environmental controls maintaining perfect temperature and humidity for their precision manufacturing. Everything normal, everything about to change in approximately 14 hours. The beauty of the system I'd built was its elegance. One master authentication server handling everything, with redundant fail-safes that all pointed back to the same licensing check. I'd designed it that way on purpose. Single point of control, impossible to bypass without admin credentials that only existed in my Ironclad database. Jordan Hayes probably thought Ironclad stood for something technical and boring. He'd looked at the org chart, seen my salary, and decided I was an expensive luxury they could do without. What he didn't understand was the difference between cost and value. I wasn't just another employee. I was the keystone holding the entire arch together. My phone rang around 8 p.m. Brandon Stone, my closest ally in the engineering department and one of the few people who actually understood what Ironclad did for the company. We'd worked together for 18 years, and I'd taught him most of what he knew about industrial automation. Good guy, solid engineer, and smart enough to see the bigger picture. "Aaron, man, what the hell happened today?" His voice was tight with anger. Jordan just fired you in front of everyone. That's completely insane. Cost optimization, I said, taking another sip of bourbon. The warmth spread through my chest, and for the first time all day, I felt my shoulders relax. Apparently, 26 years of keeping their systems running is too expensive. This is garbage, Aaron. Half the department is talking about updating their resumes. You know Martinez from maintenance? He said if they fired you, nobody's safe. I appreciated the loyalty, but Brandon had a mortgage and 3 kids to think about. His oldest daughter was a senior in high school, probably looking at colleges soon. Don't do anything stupid, Brandon. You've got a family to feed. Yeah, but still. He paused, and I could hear him thinking. In the background, I caught the sound of kids laughing, probably watching TV with their mom. Normal family sounds that reminded me what I was missing. Hey, random question. That control system you built, Ironclad, whatever. What happens to that now that you're gone? There it was. Brandon was smart enough to start connecting dots, even if he hoped he was wrong. You'd have to ask Jordan about that. I'm not employed there anymore, remember? A longer pause. I could practically hear the gears turning in his head. Aaron, please tell me you didn't build in some kind of kill switch. Nothing so dramatic, I said honestly. Just standard licensing protocols. Everything's in the contract legal approved years ago. Very straightforward business terms. Jesus, how long do we have? You should probably ask the new management about their contingency plans. I kept my voice neutral, but Brandon knew me well enough to read between the lines. We'd worked too many late nights troubleshooting problems together for him to miss the implications. Aaron, listen to me carefully. Whatever you're planning, think about it. There are good people there who don't deserve to get caught in the crossfire. That stopped me for a minute. Brandon was right. There were good people at that company. Ashley Williams just starting her career, eager to learn and full of ideas. Michael Torres from security who'd walked me out with genuine regret. The production supervisors who remembered my birthday every year and always made sure there was cake in the break room. The maintenance crew who knew I'd drop everything to help them solve a problem. But then I thought about Jordan Hayes' smirk as he told me to pack my dignity along with my laptop. The way he'd staged my firing like some corporate theater production, making sure everyone could see him flexing his authority. The complete disregard for 26 years of dedication and loyalty. The casual dismissal of everything I'd built. The good people will be fine, Brandon. This isn't about them. What about the contracts we've got running? The Henderson Industries order, that automotive parts deal with GM? Those are management concerns now. I'm sure Jordan has it all figured out. After I hung up, I walked out onto my small balcony and looked toward the industrial district, where the plant's lights were visible against the night sky. 3 shifts running round the clock, making parts for automotive companies, aerospace contractors, medical device manufacturers. Precision work that required precise control systems. Somewhere in there, Jordan was probably still at his temporary office, working late to make an impression on the board. Maybe planning his next round of optimizations. Maybe drafting an email about how he'd successfully eliminated an unnecessary expense. Maybe celebrating his first victory in what he probably saw as a war against inefficiency. In about 12 hours, his phone was going to start ringing. I finished my bourbon and went inside. Tomorrow would be interesting, but tonight I had practical matters to handle. Cobra insurance paperwork to review, unemployment benefits to file for, and a difficult conversation with Justin about what this meant for his college funding. My severance package would cover 8 weeks, and I had some savings, but single-income households don't have much margin for error, especially when you're supporting college tuition and elderly parents. I called Justin around 10 p.m., knowing he'd still be awake. College kids keep weird hours, and he was probably either studying for his thermodynamics exam or playing video games with his roommate. Hey, Dad, what's up? He sounded tired, maybe stressed about classes. Mechanical engineering wasn't easy, but he was handling it better than I'd handled my electrical courses back in the Navy. Got some news, son. Lost my job today. Silence for a few seconds. I could hear his dorm room in the background, the usual college noise. Seriously. Why? New management. Cost cutting. Nothing I did wrong, just politics. Dad, are you okay? I mean financially? Should I look into more loans or maybe transfer somewhere cheaper? This is why I was proud of that kid. 20 years old and already thinking like a responsible man. His mother raised him right, even if our marriage didn't work out. Don't worry about that right now. I've got some options and we'll figure it out together. Just focus on your studies. If you need me to come home, absolutely not. You stay right where you are and keep working hard. I didn't spend 26 years building systems, so you could drop out of college because some MBA got trigger happy with the layoff list. But as I said it, I realized that maybe, just maybe, those 26 years were about to pay off in a way Jordan Hayes never saw coming. I woke up at 6:30 a.m. without an alarm clock, same as I had for the past 26 years. Old habits die hard, especially when the Navy drilled them into you for 8 years. For about 3 seconds, I started mentally going through my morning routine. Shower, coffee, check overnight alerts, drive to the plant, then reality hit. No plant, no alerts, no job. The silence was strange. For 2 decades, my phone had been buzzing by 7 a.m. with some crisis or another. Production hiccups, safety alarms, system slowdowns, network issues. I'd become the unofficial first responder for everything electronic, which meant my phone never really stopped ringing during business hours. But this morning, nothing. Just the sound of traffic outside and Mrs. Patterson next door starting her car for her commute to the library where she volunteered. Normal sounds of people going to work while I sat in my kitchen, suddenly unemployed at 53. I made coffee in my little French press, the good stuff I usually saved for weekends, and checked my personal laptop out of habit. The Ironclad admin panel showed exactly what I expected. License status displayed terminated in red letters across the top of the screen. Below that, a cascade of error messages as 1,247 connections tried to authenticate against a system that no longer recognized them. The beautiful thing about good engineering is that it fails gracefully but completely. I hadn't built in any malicious code or dramatic destruction. Just a clean, immediate cutoff. Every access attempt would receive the same polite error message: authentication temporarily unavailable. Please contact your system administrator. Of course, their system administrator had been fired yesterday. Production line status showed red across the board. Safety monitoring systems offline. Environmental controls requesting authentication. Inventory tracking down. Even the employee badge readers at the main entrance were locked out. It was like watching dominoes fall in slow motion, each system discovering it couldn't talk to the others. My phone stayed quiet until 8:52 a.m. Then it started. Text from Ashley Williams. Mr. Westfield, nobody can log into anything. Production systems, safety monitors, inventory tracking, everything's down. Brandon doesn't know what's wrong. People are stuck in the parking lot because the badge readers aren't working. I didn't respond. Ashley was a smart kid, and she'd figure out the connection soon enough. Plus, I wasn't their employee anymore. Whatever problems they were having were management's responsibility now. 15 minutes later, my phone rang. Brandon Stone, his voice tight with stress. Aaron, we've got a situation here. Everything's locked up tight. Can't access production controls. Can't monitor safety systems. Can't even check inventory levels. We've got 180 people standing around waiting for someone to manually override the entrance gates. Sounds like a challenging morning, I said, keeping my voice neutral while sipping my coffee. Aaron, come on. This is the Ironclad system, isn't it? The license thing you mentioned last night, I'm not employed there anymore, Brandon. You'd have to ask management about their vendor relationships. A pause, then quietly. How long do we have? I mean, how long before they figure out what's happening? Depends on how smart your new operations consultant is. I took another sip of coffee and looked out my kitchen window at the morning traffic. Somewhere in that stream of cars were dozens of my former colleagues sitting in parking lots, unable to get through the automated security gates because their access system was down. Others probably standing around inside the facility, staring at blank screens and error messages. Jesus, Aaron, the clients are going to lose their minds. We've got 3 major orders due this week. Henderson Industries is expecting their automotive components by Friday. That aerospace contract with Boeing has 0 tolerance for delays. That was when I felt the first small stab of guilt. Brandon was right. This wasn't just about Jordan Hayes. Every minute the system stayed down meant delayed orders, angry customers, and lost revenue for a company that employed a lot of good people. People with families and mortgages and college tuition payments just like mine. But then I thought about Jordan's smirk as he told me to pack my dignity along with my laptop, the way he'd turned my termination into a public humiliation. Some lessons are expensive, but they stick. I'm sure Jordan will figure something out, I said. He's got an MBA, right? Probably learned all about crisis management in business school. By 10:30, my phone was buzzing every few minutes. Texts from people I hadn't heard from in months, all asking variations of the same question. Is this connected to you getting fired? Sarah from HR. Aaron, please tell me this isn't what I think it is. Tom from maintenance. Everything's dead here. Even the HVAC system is asking for authentication. Lisa from quality control. We can't access any of our testing protocols. Jordan's running around asking everyone if they know your password. I ignored most of them. But when Torres from security texted to say they couldn't even control the building's fire suppression system, I almost felt bad. Safety systems were no joke in a manufacturing environment. You don't mess around with things that keep people alive. Around 11:45, I got a call from an unknown number with the company's area code. Mr. Westfield, this is Rachel from Emergency IT Support. I'm calling because we're having some technical difficulties with our control systems, and your name came up as someone who might be able to help. Poor Rachel. Probably some contractor who'd been handed a phone and told to start calling anyone who might know something about their setup. She sounded young, maybe fresh out of college, definitely in over her head. I'm sorry, Rachel, but I don't work there anymore. You'll need to contact Ironclad Solutions directly for any licensing or technical issues. I see. Do you happen to have their contact information? I almost smiled. It should be in your vendor database, or you could try a Google search. Ironclad Solutions should come right up. We tried that. The website just has a contact form. We've been trying to reach someone all morning. Well, I'm sure they'll get back to you when they can. These things take time. After I hung up, I walked out onto my balcony and looked toward the industrial district. I couldn't see their building from here, but I could imagine what was happening. Jordan in his temporary office, probably on his 5th or 6th phone call to IT vendors, trying to find someone who could fix a problem he didn't understand. Production managers explaining to increasingly agitated clients why their orders were going to be delayed. The plant manager, Ryan Morrison, asking pointed questions about why their entire operation had apparently been built around one person. My phone rang again at 1:23 p.m. This time it was a number I recognized, the main company line. Aaron, it wasn't a question. Jordan's voice was different now, stripped of yesterday's smugness and replaced with something that sounded like barely controlled panic. Jordan, I kept my voice level professional, like I was talking to any other business contact. We need to talk. I'm not employed there anymore, remember? You made that pretty clear yesterday. A pause. In the background, I could hear voices, stress-filled conversations, the sound of a company in crisis mode. Someone was arguing about calling customers to explain delays. Someone else was asking about insurance liability if they couldn't monitor safety systems. Look, we're having some issues with our control systems. The vendor says the license is tied to you personally. That's correct. Another pause. Longer this time. I could practically hear him choosing his words carefully, probably with someone coaching him in the background. What would it take to get that restored? And there it was, less than 30 hours after firing me in front of 180 people. Jordan Hayes was asking for my help. The same man who told me to leave my dignity on his desk was now forced to come back hat in hand, begging for the expertise he dismissed as too expensive. But I wasn't going to make this easy for him. You'll need to contact Ironclad Solutions about any licensing discussions, I said calmly. I believe you have their information. Aaron, come on. We both know you are Ironclad Solutions. Then you should probably talk to them about restoring service. I'm just enjoying my first day of retirement. I hung up before he could respond. Not angrily, not dramatically, just cleanly. The way you end a business call when the conversation is over. The silence after I hung up on Jordan lasted exactly 47 minutes. Then my phone rang again, but this time it was a number that made me sit up straighter. Ryan Morrison's direct line. Our CEO didn't make social calls, especially not to recently fired employees. Aaron, it's Ryan Morrison. His voice was calm, but I could hear the weight behind it. Military guys learn to recognize when their commanding officer is keeping it together through pure discipline. We need to talk. Good afternoon, Ryan. I just got out of the most unpleasant 2 hours of my life, listening to our entire management team explain why we can't operate our own facility. You want to tell me what's happening here? I respected Ryan Morrison. He was 62, former Navy submarine commander who'd built this company from a 50-person operation into a 400-employee manufacturer. When he spoke, people listened, including me, but respect didn't change the facts. I'm no longer employed there, Ryan. Jordan made that pretty clear yesterday. A long pause, Aaron, I wasn't in that meeting. I was in Detroit meeting with GM about the new contract. When I got back this morning and heard what happened, I couldn't believe it. Believe it. Your efficiency consultant decided 26 years of institutional knowledge was too expensive, and now you can't even run a production line without calling the vendor. Ryan's voice carried the dry humor of someone who'd seen enough stupidity to last several lifetimes. Help me understand something. This Ironclad system, that's yours. My company built and licensed it to you, yes, and the licensing terms are exactly what legal approved 14 years ago. Another pause. I could hear him thinking, probably pulling up the contract on his screen. Ryan was hands-on enough to read the fine print himself. Jesus Christ, Aaron. Valid only while the named founder remains actively employed. How did this get past everyone? It didn't get past anyone. It was reviewed, approved, and signed by the appropriate parties. The system worked flawlessly for 14 years. Until yesterday, Ryan agreed. Ryan was quiet for almost a minute. When he spoke again, his voice had shifted into command mode. I'm calling an emergency board meeting for this afternoon. Can you be here at 4 p.m.? Are you offering me my job back? I'm offering you a conversation. The rest we'll figure out in the room. At 3:45 p.m., I walked back into the building I'd been escorted out of 30 hours earlier. Michael Torres was working the manual override on the main entrance, letting people in and out by hand since the electronic access system was still down. He looked embarrassed when he saw me. Hey Aaron, sorry about, well, all of this. Not your fault, Michael. Just doing your job. The elevator was running on emergency power mode, manually operated. I rode up to the executive floor thinking about how much had changed in less than 2 days. Yesterday, I was walking out with my boxes. Today, I was walking back in to negotiate from a position of strength. The boardroom was tense when I walked in. Ryan Morrison sat at the head of the table, flanked by 3 board members I recognized. Amanda Foster from legal, Mark Cooper, who represented the investors, and Jennifer Adams, a tired-looking woman in her 50s with a laptop open in front of her. Aaron, thanks for coming. Ryan gestured to an empty chair. I think you know everyone except our emergency IT consultant, Jennifer Adams from Secure Systems Recovery. Jennifer, this is Aaron Westfield, our former infrastructure director and the founder of Ironclad Solutions. Jennifer looked up from her screen. Mr. Westfield, I've been reviewing your system architecture. It's comprehensive. Thank you. Also, completely impossible to bypass without administrator credentials. My firm specializes in system recovery, and I've never seen anything this tightly integrated. Ryan leaned forward. Jennifer estimates 6 to 8 weeks and $220,000 to rebuild our infrastructure from scratch, assuming we can find all the documentation and retrain our staff on new systems. What about our current operations? Amanda Foster asked. Dead in the water until Mr. Westfield chooses to restore the license. Jordan shifted uncomfortably in his chair at the far end of the table. He looked like he hadn't slept in 36 hours. His expensive suit was wrinkled and his MBA confidence had evaporated into something that looked like barely controlled panic. All eyes turned to me. I opened the folder I'd brought and slid copies of a single document across the table. New licensing agreement, updated terms reflecting current market rates and the critical nature of the service. Jordan finally spoke, his voice strained. What are you asking for? I kept my voice calm, professional. Restoration of the master license under a 5-year agreement at $115,000 annually, paid in advance. Consulting contract for system documentation and knowledge transfer at $350 per hour, estimated 180 hours. And a personal apology letter acknowledging that yesterday's termination was handled inappropriately. The room went quiet. Amanda Foster was already scanning the contract, her legal mind checking for traps. Mark Cooper was calculating costs on his phone. Ryan Morrison was watching Jordan, probably wondering if his efficiency consultant was worth the trouble of keeping. The apology letter, Jordan said slowly. What exactly would that say? That the decision to terminate my employment was made without proper consideration of operational dependencies and that the process failed to meet professional standards. Jordan's face went white. I'm not admitting to wrongdoing. Then your systems stay down, I said simply. Your choice. Ryan Morrison leaned back in his chair, studying Jordan with the expression of a submarine commander, deciding whether to surface in hostile waters. After what felt like an hour but was probably 30 seconds, he turned to me. We'll sign. The contract negotiation took another 90 minutes. but it was mostly technical details. Jennifer Adams would work with me on the knowledge transfer. Brandon Stone would be promoted to senior systems engineer with a $12,000 raise. Jordan Hayes would be transferring to the corporate office for special projects within 45 days, a lateral move that everyone understood was corporate speak for career over. When the last signature was dry, I stood and shook Ryan's hand. "Pleasure doing business with you, Aaron," Ryan said quietly. "For what it's worth, this never should have happened. No, sir, it shouldn't have, but it did. And now everyone knows the real cost of institutional knowledge." I walked out of that building with a 5-year contract worth $575,000 and the quiet satisfaction of someone who not only survived an ambush, but had turned it into a strategic victory. Behind me, Jordan Hayes was probably updating his LinkedIn profile and wondering how he'd explain this catastrophe to future employers. 2 weeks later, Justin called to tell me his grades were good enough for the dean's list. I didn't tell him that his tuition was now secure for the next 5 years, or that his old man had just learned that sometimes the best revenge is simply letting people face the consequences of their own decisions. That's how you handle it when someone mistakes your quiet competence for weakness. You don't get mad, you don't get loud. You get professional terms and conditions that ensure it never happens again. Sometimes the people who talk the least are the ones holding everything together. And the loudest lesson comes when they simply walk away and let gravity do the rest. In a world obsessed with cutting costs and chasing the latest efficiency trends, never forget that some things can't be Googled, outsourced, or replaced by a cheaper alternative. Institutional knowledge walks out the door with the person who built it. And sometimes, if you're smart and patient enough, it can walk back in on much better terms. The real power isn't in what you know minute. It's in making sure the right people understand they can't afford to lose it. When they think you're just another expense on their spreadsheet, sometimes the best education is letting them discover what their world looks like without you.